Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
You are listening to the TrekRanks podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 12, featuring the top 5 premiere episodes. Welcome, Star Trek fans. I am Jim Moorhouse. I am the host of the TrekRanks podcast, right here on the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. And I, as always, super excited to be here tonight. As I just said, this is episode 12 of TrekRanks, and tonight we're changing up the format just a tad, just a teeny bit, like a nanite size change in how we're going to structure this one, because, well, we'll get into that slight format change in a second, but first up, sad trombone, Jeff Hewlett is not with us tonight. He is traveling this week to some far-off sector, so he's not available. So let's talk about our guests that are here tonight and about tonight's topic. So first up, this is our third and final episode in our Discovery series that we've been doing this past month, and we did this just to celebrate the return of Star Trek to TV, which we still can't believe has actually happened now. So in episode 10, we did Star Trek's top 5 Klingon episodes, because, as you know by now, Star Trek Discovery is very heavily influenced by a bunch of dishonorable Klingons. At least, well, maybe we'll see if they're actually dishonorable by the time this series plays out. And then in the following episode, we did Star Trek's top 5 epic arcs because, again, as you know by now, Discovery is one big, long, 15-part, season-long movie, and we're loving it so far in the first 2 episodes. So tonight, in episode 12, we found a clever way, we think, to keep talking Discovery after its launch last weekend, and we're going to talk about our top 5 premiere episodes. So before we get into exactly how we're going to break that down, let's talk to our 2 guests for tonight's show. First up, Mr. Alex Perry, who, if you're not following on Twitter, you should be. The man is a Star Trek expert. He reviews novels for TrekCore, and he's just an all-around swell chap from the England quadrant. By way of the DC sector, Alex, are you there?
Joe Lantrue, Jim. Thank you for having me.
Oh, apparently he's Romulan, too. I love it. So awesome to finally have you on the show, man.
Absolutely.
I know this is gonna be way too much fun, and because our other guest, it's a TrekRanks first. It's our first returning veteran, our first 2-time host, and I always knew it would be her because she's one of my favorite all-time Trekkies. It's the isolinear chick herself, Claire Little. Claire.
Yay! Veteran of the Federation Cardassian Wars or something dramatic like that.
Oh, I like that. That sounds ominous.
I know. I don't know why I'm bringing us to such a dark place right now.
Were you at Chintaka?
Yes.
Oh.
I'm still getting over it. No, actually, no, wait a minute. No, I take it back. I'm not, because it's very episodic. I was over it immediately after that episode ended, and then my character was no longer at all affected by it.
Something you won't see in Star Trek Discovery.
Exactly.
All right, so Alex, let's talk about your Trek origin story, which we like to do with our first-time guests. So tell us kind of your Trek background and how you got into Trek.
So I have been a Star Trek fan since I was 6 years old. I remember the very first time I ever watched it. I came home. I came home from some after-school activity, and Star Trek: The Next Generation was playing on BBC Two. It must have been like 6 o'clock in the evening, and I turned it on, and it was the last 15 minutes of A Matter of Time, the episode where Rasmussen says he comes from the future, but really comes from the past, and it was that scene where they're in the time ship and they find that he's pilfered everything from the Enterprise, and even though it's only a so-so episode, I was totally hooked. I remember running to my mum and saying, "Oh, I just watched this amazing TV show," and she was like, "Yeah, whatever." But then every week I watched it religiously, and I've been a true obsessive Star Trek fan ever since. I can't get enough of it. Little did she know the obsession that had just begun. That's right. And she reminds me of that. Well, I remind her of that, and she's like, yeah, I had no idea at the time that that was what it was going to turn out to be.
That is so great. Fantastic. All right, so Claire, what is... So we're going to... people have heard you on the Tricorder Transmissions Network many times. I'm just going to ask you a quick question just to kind of get people to get a feel for who is Claire Little. And that question is, what is your favorite Star Trek series? This is my favorite question to ask everybody I meet, and it's really what began the No Wrong Answers, because anytime I'm in an elevator at STLV or anywhere I'm walking and I see someone Star Trek, what's your favorite series? It's a great icebreaker. So what's your answer to that question?
You know that I always hesitate about ranking things or picking a favorite, but I'm going to say if I was trapped on a desert island and I could only take one series with me, it's got to be Next Generation. Ooh, it's what I was raised on, so it's the one that is the most kind of comfort food for me. I wouldn't say it's... I cannot choose a favorite. I just flat out can't. But as far as if I could only watch one series again for the rest of my life, I think it would be that one. But
today, if we were shipping you off to a desert island and you had to grab a Blu-ray from one of those 5, now 6 series,
I know,
you would choose TNG, and of course, No Wrong Answer. It's a great pick. Yeah. It's fantastic, but that gives people a feel for kind of where you're coming from your Star Trek background. Okay, so before we get into our Diagnostic Cycle, let's just do a quick TrekRanks reset. And as you know, that begins with...
infinite diversity.
In infinite combinations.
All right, so if you're joining us for the first time, that was wise old Vulcan Master and a young, angry Tuvok reminding us that at TrekRanks, there are indeed no wrong answers. We're all about whatever you want to talk about when it comes to your love for Trek. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's about the reasons we love Star Trek. We're not here to nitpick. That's too easy to do. And you can hear that in a lot of other places. So we use the rankings in our list. Some people like to say it's folly to try to rank 700 hours of Trek and all its history. But the whole point is we just use it as a platform to have a fun conversation and maybe highlight some elements of Trek that in ways you haven't thought of before. So bottom line, we love it all here. We love the Kelvin timeline. We love TOS all the way through to Enterprise, and now we get to add Discovery to that conversation because it's on the air, and I still can't believe a little bit. So, all right, before we get really started here, let's check in with everyone's favorite communications officer to make sure we are clear for your incoming transmissions.
Hailing frequencies are open.
All right, so you can check us out on the World Wide Web at TrekRanks.com and at TrekRanks.TricorderTransmissions.com. And if you want to leave us a message with your own picks, you can do that at 609-512-LLAP. That's 609-512-5527. I'll give that number again at the end of the show. And finally, you can reach me on Twitter at TrekRanks and also at Enterprise Extra. So hopefully we'll hear from you because, as I say every week, the show is definitely better when we're hearing from you. So, all right, to wrap it up, Claire and Alex, would you guys like to tell everybody how they can get a hold of you?
I'm on Twitter. I think Jim already said my handle. It's Isolinear Chick, CHICK, not CHIP. And that's it.
Still the best handle ever on Twitter. Alex, how about you?
The best place to get me is on Twitter. It's at Alexander T. Perry. I know it's not terribly imaginative, but it's super easy to remember.
And super professional.
Yes.
You need a clever Star Trek.
I know. I'm thinking about making a change, but I need to come up with something clever for this.
All right. Okay. So I think we're ready to get Mr. O'Brien on the comm system to fire up a level 1 diagnostic.
Diagnostic cycle will be complete in 20 seconds.
Okay. This is a historic night. I am super excited to have you guys to talk about this with. Discovery is now in play and eligible for selection to any topic on TrekRanks that we want to throw out there. So, I mean, how cool is that, you guys? We actually have new Star Trek episodes to talk about.
It is the coolest.
Alex, how many times have you watched the first 2 episodes?
I am up. So what are we? We are now 5 days after the premiere. I'm up to rewatch number 8.
That is spectacular.
Yeah.
I'm on 4, and I'm really embarrassed that. But his wife's out of town, so I think that's the difference.
Yes, it has made it much easier. I have total control of the television.
Okay. I love it.
I've only rewatched twice, but I'm going to watch it again before tomorrow night's episode. So
yes,
I'll get to 3 rewatches before.
That is my plan as well. And not to get off topic, but it's a little bit. It's different than a movie, right? I mean, because there's more coming. So when the movies come out, it's I don't know. It's something different about the fact that it's back on TV.
It's where it belongs.
Yep, yes. For sure. All right. So we have a slightly new format tonight, and let me just talk you through that a bit. What we're going to do. What we've always known is at TrekRanks, there are sometimes there's going to be limited possibilities as a selection for specific topics. So normally our topics are pretty broad, and there's hundreds of choices, and you can, include in your ranks. But sometimes we want to do topics where, like if you do your favorite doctor or your favorite engineering set, or like tonight's episode, our top 5 premiere episodes. We know it's a real finite list. So using our current structure, we would just be talking about the same thing over and over again. So in this week's Prime Directive section of the show, we're going to basically go around the horn on every Trek premiere episode, and we're each going to talk about one thing that we want to highlight about the episode, and it can literally be anything. Favorite moment, portrayal, character, a theme, a specific scene, whatever it is that you want to highlight or focus on from that episode, something that you love about it. And we'll start that with the man trap in round 1, and we'll go all the way through to Discovery and their 2 premiere episodes, The Vulcan Hello and Battle at the Binary Stars. Love those titles. So the Prime Directive will be the core of tonight's show, where normally the order of things is the core of tonight's show. So once we get to the order of things, each guest will then run through their top 5 picks really quick, and we'll relay our 5 words and a hashtag and talk about everybody's list and see where things fall. Does that make sense, guys?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to be awesome. Before we get rolling on the Prime Directive, let's just finish off this diagnostic cycle really quick by talking about premiere episodes. I mean, I think, obviously we've all been looking forward to Discovery. The anticipation has been building for, basically 2 years. It's totally been amplified by the fact that Trek hasn't been on TV since 2005. So can you guys think back to previous Trek premieres that you experienced, and anything stand out for you in that, relative to this experience, waiting for these series to debut, these episodes? Alex, how about you?
So the only premiere that I watched first run was Broken Bow. And I remember Voyager was ending, and they were putting out trailers for Enterprise, and I must have watched. There was one trailer that had a pretty terrible song by The Calling as the backing track. I must have watched that 1,000 times, and I think I still have the words that were the section from that commercial still memorized somewhere in the back of my mind because of how many times I watched that. The other shows. I was moving around a lot when I was a little kid, and so, Voyager, I think I'd seen some episodes of season 1 before I saw Caretaker, and I remember thinking at the time I was watching those episodes, I have no idea what's going on here, and then later seeing Caretaker obviously filled it all back in. But around that time, because Star Trek was not easy to get, if you missed the premiere, you were kind of stuck with whatever was coming up, and maybe you got a VHS to fill in the things from before. So for me, this has been my first premiere as an adult, and that has kind of, cast everything in an entirely different light and just heightened the experience for me no end.
Ooh, that is interesting. Editor's note, I love that song by The Calling. That was so good in that commercial. I love that commercial. And I always thought, I wish they had chosen that song to open the series. How about you, Claire? What kind of memories do you have waiting for new Star Trek to appear?
So I think similar to Alex, I vividly remember the anticipation of Enterprise. I mean, my parents are also both Trekkies, and so we had all the TV guides and the entertainment weeklies and all the magazines that, just as with Discovery, that had the kind of special preview articles. We pored over those. I'll admit we kept them in Ziploc bags for a while, just in case, there was a flood or something.
Respect.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if my parents still have them in bags, but I definitely remember us scrutinizing the cast images. Like, we all thought Phlox was going to be an idiot because of his makeup design, and of course, Phlox is amazing, so we were wrong on that. I don't remember Voyager or DS9. I don't remember the anticipation for that, even though I do remember watching those shows. This premiere itself, I don't really have memories of. The premiere of TNG is my earliest Star Trek memory. I was 2.5. Everyone who knows me has heard this story, but yeah, I remember watching it with my parents at 2.5. It's like a fuzzy still photo of a memory, but... Yeah.
And you swear at age 2.5 you can still remember the dulcet tones of Jean-Luc Picard. I love that.
I have other memories from that age, so I believe I trust my memory on that one.
Okay, do you remember that little fold-out like mini poster of the Enterprise from the TV Guide?
For Next Generation?
No, for Enterprise when it was one of the one of the promotional items.
You know what? I do. I'm pretty sure we weren't able we kept it in the TV Guide though.
Yeah, it was pretty. It was pretty cool.
Yeah,
it was pretty cool. Okay, so really just Enterprise for you, you young'uns. And yeah, I can remember all of them because I'm super old.
Which was your favorite? Which did you anticipate the most?
Probably Deep Space Nine, because it was coming in the middle of Next Gen, and it was this expansion of the universe that you just never thought was going to be possible. So I just remember being super excited about that element and having it right at the same time. The one that's most memorable is Voyager, because I was fired up about it, and I remember I was out of town. I was living in San Diego, and I was driving in LA the day before it was debuting, and there was this huge crash on the 405. It was I tell this story, it was a 10-car crash, but it should have been an 8-car crash because I was the 9th car, and I stopped, and I was able to avoid it, but the guy behind me couldn't, and he hit us and rammed us up into the thing, and we got out of our car. It was totaled, and all I was thinking about is, how am I going to, and this is before, internet and all these things you can do. I'm just like, how am I going to get home in time to watch Voyager tomorrow night? It's all I cared about. I was standing on the 405 in the rain in the middle of the night thinking, I just got to get home in 12 hours and see Voyager. It's all that matters. Gosh. So
I hope that you were visibly injured so that you could say that to paramedics and have them think you had a concussion or something, and you're like, no, actually, I'm totally fine.
All I care about is getting home in front of my VCR so I can tape Voyager. Yeah. All right, so let's check in on General Order number 1 and see what everyone's prime directive looks like on this topic.
I do not concur with your captain's decision.
She's following our prime directive.
Define prime directive.
Okay, so let's go through these premiere episodes. We're going to start with the Man Trap. And Alex, let's start with you. What's your first call out? What do you want to highlight from the Man Trap?
So I think the thing I want to highlight from the Man Trap, which of course everybody knows is an episode that was not supposed to be a premiere episode. It was the 5th or 6th that was filmed, and it just happened to be the one ready because post-production on the actual pilot episodes had run long, and so it's kind of a weird pilot. Because you just kind of get thrown right into it, and there's no real setup. But one of the things I think it does really well that actually the true pilot itself does not do quite so well is that it's one of the few episodes of the original series that's actually a true ensemble in some ways, and that's kind of less than you would find on some of the later TV shows. But within the Man Trap, you have really solid scenes for pretty much every character, with the exception of Scotty, who does not appear in the episode at all. But for the rest of the characters, you have that really nice scene with Spock and Uhura at the captain's chair. You have the nice scene between Sulu and Rand. You get great stuff between McCoy and Kirk. And unlike some of the episodes where you really did focus in on that sort of Kirk-Spock and Kirk-Spock-McCoy relationship, in this one, everybody had something to do that was meaningful. And you didn't get that a ton in the original series.
Yeah, that is a great observation. And, well, I was going to have Claire go, but I'm just going to go because we already have a duplicate. That is exactly what I was going to highlight from the Man Trap, was the fact that, I mean, obviously, again, you said it. I think it was the 5th episode filmed, and as much as I wanted to choose Beauregard as my the flower creature as my favorite thing about the Man Trap, for me, the thing that was so amazing about it was that every character already feels totally, completely lived in.
Fascinating. So improbable, we almost didn't check it.
What?
Sodium chloride. Not a trace of it.
This man has no salt in his body at all.
Can you explain that, Doctor?
I can. Except what we normally carry in our bodies is gone from his.
He would die almost instantly.
Oh, there isn't a mark on his body.
Except the red rings on his face.
You call that skin mottling?
I thought it was, sir. Another error on my part.
I'm not counting them bones. You, in the mood for an apology?
Forget it. I probably was mooning over. I should have been thinking about my job.
Perhaps you were. Both Nancy and Crater went out of their way to mention one item they needed.
Salt tablets.
Mr. Spock, outfit a landing party. We're beaming down with some questions.
Kirk and Spock and McCoy are just killing it right out of the gate. And you have the scene with Uhura on the bridge, and Sulu, who may or may not be a botanist, but is hanging out with Beauregard in that room with Rand. So just really, really interesting. The characters are just nailed right from the beginning, like something you don't see necessarily in the other series. So, and by the way, we are doing the Man Trap because this episode is premiere episodes. We're not doing pilots, just in case anyone's confused.
And I'm sure there's someone who's screaming into their microphone right now about why we chose the Man Trap.
It was the cage. No, it was where no man has gone before. No, it was, yeah.
It's the premiere episode, so we can really do an apples-to-apples comparison of the first thing you saw when it comes to Trek. So, how about you, Claire? What did you want to highlight on the Man Trap?
Well, my notes also touch on the fact that this was not intended as a premiere when it was written and filmed. I know that Leonard Nimoy pushed for having the naked time as the first episode to air, which really does. I totally can see why he wanted that, because it delves into the characters more. But Alex, you bring up a really good point that the Man Trap also has a lot of really good character moments. Maybe not as iconic character-wise as the Naked Time, but I do still think it's a very iconic episode. My moment, this is kind of a lame one. It's just the first establishing shot of the Enterprise, because I was trying, when I rewatched it, I tried to think about it as, what if I was watching this and I'd never seen Star Trek before? So thinking about it as a premiere. And I would imagine that everyone who sat down and watched that the night it first aired, they may not have had any idea that they were looking at some extremely potent sort of pop culture iconography the first time that the opening credits run or you see the Enterprise. How cool to think back on that if you did get to watch it when it first aired and realize you were seeing something really seminal.
That is far from being silly. That is an awesome pick, because it gives you goosebumps when you think about kind of what they established right off the bat with those first shots of the Enterprise. So
yeah,
cool.
And that ship design it's burned into everyone's sort of subconscious now, but at the time it was completely original. I mean, it still seems original to me, but it's bizarre. It's not a UFO. It's not the kind of pie plate shape. I mean, it was a really unusual, kind of iconic I guess, ship design.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. Because with all the subsequent premieres, you know what a starship looks like, right? Like, the ship itself might be shaped slightly differently, but all of those extremely fundamental things to what Star Trek is, the relationship between the captain and other members of the crew, just that saucer section and star drive with the warp nacelles, like all of that, the transporter effect, which you see for the first time in this episode, this is people seeing this for the very first time, whereas in every subsequent premiere, it's sort of, now we're watching this version of something we're already familiar with. I think that's such a great pick.
Right. I mean, I'd love to know what people thought when they first saw the Enterprise, because if you've never seen it before, you don't know that the nacelles are the propulsion of the ship. You don't know what each part does or why it's shaped the way it is. You don't know the internal logic yet. And yet it still looks like an elegant, somehow believable spaceship.
Yeah, it's too bad the design didn't really stand the test of time.
I know, it's
what a disaster. All right. That's awesome. So let's move to round 2 and the Next Generation and talk about Encounter at Farpoints. So, Alex, what do you want to highlight from the first TNG episode?
So I actually want to take the conversation that we were just having and flip it on its head slightly, because my pick for Encounter at Farpoint is the opening sequence. Star Trek's back, the first time it's been on TV since 1969. And the episode opens with you pan up on the Enterprise D, which is a familiar shape, but an unfamiliar expression of that shape. It's a fantastic shot. It's a shot that I think they only use once more in the whole series. And then you get this, so you pan in on the ship and it looks very impressive. And then the next shot is Picard standing in darkness in the observation room, framed by the window, and then he steps forward, and you get the first look of him in the new uniform, and that whole captain's log section where he walks through engineering and then he walks out onto the bridge. It's so effective at kind of throwing you back into the world of Star Trek, but in a really different way, and really impressing you actually with the sets that they designed, how intricate they are, how impressive they are, the general sense of scale and space that there is, and how much more futuristic it is than what we saw in the original series. I just think it's a really, really effective establishing shot. The only thing about it is Patrick Stewart has these weird inflections that he puts on his words in the first few episodes playing Picard. Eventually he dumps it and just goes with the straight English accent, but it can be a little jarring to watch it again and hear the kind of weird ways he was pronouncing words. But I love everything about the first couple of minutes of Encounter at Farpoint. We can talk about the last 118 minutes, but those first 2 minutes are excellent.
It's going to be interesting when we do talk about it. What do you know about English accents? He nailed it. That first shot is amazing, and say no more. I can picture it in my head. It's fantastic.
I will say that opening scene, it is really wonderful, but there are a few moments in that scene, as well as later in the episode, where it's some really unusual camera work going on. It's almost, you can tell they're using a handheld camera as they pan through engineering, and it's almost as if they tripped on someone. or the camera noticeably jostles down and then back up, and they just keep panning. And I've never noticed it before, but I watched it again yesterday, and there's a lot of weird camera work in that episode.
I love those unique angles they use in the.
The unique angles are great, but it's very. I think the camera people hadn't yet figured out how to film on those sets. Or the director
I agree with that.
You can tell it's the first time they've pointed a camera around, and it works, but it's unusual.
Yeah,
they do things that they never do again.
So what's your Farpoint call out, Claire?
My call out is, it's a moment during the Picard Q courtroom scenes, and it's when Picard basically kind of calls Q out on the whole judging humanity, and he says, all right, we agree there is evidence to support the court's contention that humans have been savage. Therefore, I say, test us. Test whether this is presently true of humans. I chose that moment because I think whatever else is going on in that episode, good or bad, that is the ultimate thesis of the next 30 years of Star Trek. Every single piece of Star Trek to follow that has either been reinforcing or actively refuting the moments in that courtroom scene. I think you really can't have, I'm going to call it modern Star Trek, meaning Star Trek from 1987 forward. There is no modern Star Trek without Picard and Q and that adversarial relationship and establishing that humanity. I don't know. I feel like that nugget in that episode is so critical to all of Star Trek that follows.
Silence! Continuing these proceedings, I must caution you that legal trickery is not permitted. This is a court of fact.
We humans know our past, even when we're ashamed of it. I recognize this court system as the one that agreed with that line from Shakespeare. Kill all the lawyers.
Which was done.
Leading to the rule, guilty until proven innocent.
Of course, bringing the innocent to trial would be unfair. You will now answer to the charge of being a grievously savage race.
Grievously savage could mean anything. I will answer only specific charges.
Are you certain you want a full disclosure of human ugliness? So be it, fool. Present the charges!
Yeah, and that plays a little bit into mine because, well, I'll do mine really quick, is that I think I'm in the minority on Encounter at Farpoint in that, and I freely admit that the characters are not, really fully lived in, especially in contrast to what we just talked about in The Man Trap. But my call out for the episode is just the deliberate way in which the whole thing feels like a pilot. I just love the way it introduces the characters, because it really painstakingly, and including the ship, because that which you talked about, Alex, the way it introduces the ship in those opening scenes, and the mission, and what you were just saying, Claire, is I love that all good things makes Encounter at Farpoint way better for me.
Yeah.
Because it's such an unbelievable bookend to think about those two in concert when you have the best finale, one of the best finales in television history, against a pilot that has some. Yeah, the characters aren't exactly the ones we grow to know and love, but from a structure standpoint, I kind of like Encounter at Farpoint, so I might be in the minority on that.
I like it too.
All right, we'll see. We'll see where it ends up on our list. Okay, let's jump to round 3 and Deep Space Nine and Emissary. Alex, what do you got?
So my pick for Emissary is the Bashir Kira scene in the infirmary, because I think it really symbolizes the show as a whole. You have this brash, young, idealistic Starfleet officer who views Bajor as the wilderness, and who has these kind of set of ideals that he wants to bring kind of his, philosophy to the natives and have them, just be in awe of him. And I think Bashir in that scene kind of stands in for Starfleet and the Federation as a whole, right? And I think, one of the criticisms of the Next Generation that you hear occasionally is that there's a lot of moralizing that goes on, right? That these people are the apex of what they can be, and so they're in a privileged position to be able to explain why the natives are wrong. But Deep Space Nine takes that idea and totally flips it on its head, because you have that attempt to begin moralizing and through, granted, this very brash, egotistical young doctor, but then Kira immediately slaps him down and is right, when he says, I could have gone anywhere and I chose to come out here in the wilderness where real medicine gets done, and she just looks at him and says, well, you know what, doctor, this wilderness is my home. And it just immediately kind of cuts through all of that sense that, that one side is right and one side is wrong. And the whole show's about that. It's about how, the Starfleet characters sort of are figuring out how to live in this environment where, everything isn't necessarily perfect, and how do you hold up to your ideals. So I just think that one scene kind of perfectly encapsulates a lot of what happens after, and I think that's why I chose it.
Yeah, it's a perfect scene to sum up where we are with this kind of new Star Trek.
Absolutely.
It's super cool. All right, what about you, Claire? What's your pick for Emissary?
I'm going to do a quick unaudible here. I'm changing it up right now. What I was going to say is the viewer seeing such different sets. I mean, I think Deep Space Nine, the Terek Nor, the station itself is like one of the stars of the show. But I'm actually changing it to the scene when Sisko meets Picard. Yeah, the first scene, and they meet twice throughout in the episode. I think it was extremely risky and kind of ballsy of the writers to have Sisko, a character we don't even know, kind of openly having negative feelings for this other character that we know and love. And I mean, it's Picard. Like he's perfect. How can you not love this guy? And so here you see Sisko being less than impressed, and for a good reason, really resentful towards Picard. And you come to understand why he feels that way, but I mean, it could really have turned off a lot of viewers, and I don't know, maybe it did. I don't remember. But it really tells you, like, okay, guys, you're in for a very different show. This is not Next Generation.
I have been made aware by Starfleet of your objections to this assignment. I would have thought that after 3 years spent at the Utopia Prenicia Yards that you would be ready for a change.
I have a son that I'm raising alone, Captain. This is not the ideal environment.
Unfortunately, as Starfleet officers, we do not always have the luxury to serve in an ideal environment.
I realize that, sir, and I'm investigating the possibility of returning to Earth for civilian service.
And perhaps Starfleet Command should be considering a replacement for you.
That's probably a good idea.
I'll look into it. In the meantime, however...
In the meantime, I will do the job I've been ordered to do to the best of my ability, sir.
Dismissed.
Yeah, you're right. Such a risky thing. And I remember I was, in my 20s watching it thinking, who does this guy think he is? That's Picard. He's the greatest.
Well, and Avery Brooks has such a unique style with that character. So again, it's just very... You almost get whiplash, but sort of in a good way.
I actually have slightly contrasting opinion on that. I think Picard comes off as a bit of a jerk in this scene. I think he keeps up. I think he's 2 for 2 on being a jerk in Star Trek pilots. I think that you have it established that Sisko's gone through this extremely traumatic experience at the hands of Picard, because you see him as Locutus in that opening scene, and then he's standing in front of him in the ready room, and Picard is not terribly understanding of Sisko's feelings, and in some ways, for me, when I just rewatched it, it made me kind of get on Sisko's side much quicker. I mean, obviously I love Picard, he's my favorite captain, but I thought it was very effective in immediately endearing me to this new character that I didn't know and was suspicious of.
Interesting. There are no wrong answers on TrekRanks, but yeah, I'm totally opposite on that. I've always thought of it as, well, you're going to blame me for that? Sorry, excuse me? You're blaming me for being captured by the Borg and being forced to do that? Okay, cool. Got it. That's how I've always looked at that. You can't blame somebody for that. Picard has nothing to do with it. And just, I guess maybe your key point is him being a little more sensitive to it, but that's a lot of people he's got to walk around on eggshells around then to even live his life for having been abused by the Borg that way. So, interesting perspective, Mr. Perry. I love it.
Bringing a little bit of the debate.
Good. Sorry about that cough. Okay, so I'm totally cheating. I'm just going to rattle off 3 things that I absolutely love about this episode, because I couldn't pick just one. First, the Denorius belt. I just love saying Denorius belt. That was such a cool Star Trek location. I love Kaiopaka. Camille Saviola is just amazing in this performance, and it kills me every time watching her that they killed her off so early in DS9. I love that character. And then finally, it's one of the great effect shots in all of Star Trek history when the Saratoga is when the escape pod on the Saratoga is popping out during the battle of Wolf 359. And it does that 360 and it sees the Saratoga explode. Absolutely incredible. Love that shot. So
can I just say also, speaking of special effects in that episode, the wormhole opening looks as good today as it did when it aired. That special in the wormhole, okay, that looks kind of cheesy now, but the wormhole effect itself is beautiful still.
You're absolutely right.
That's a great shout out. So, okay, well, let's go to Star Trek premiere episode number 4, Voyager's Caretaker. Alex, what do you got?
I have another relationship scene, just because I really like it, and it's the scene where Neelix beams aboard Voyager and has that interaction with Tuvok, where you have this extremely gregarious individual and the buttoned-up Vulcan.
Energize.
Astonishing! You Federations are obviously an advanced culture.
The Federation is made up of many cultures. I am Vulcan.
Neelix. Good to meet you. Interesting. What exactly does all this do?
I assure you that everything in this room has a specific function. However, it would take several hours to explain it all. I suggest we proceed to your quarters. Perhaps you would care for a bath.
A what?
I love that relationship throughout the show. Outside of his relationship with Tuvok, there are many things you could say about Neelix, not all of them good. But I love every episode that revolves around those two characters and their relationship. And that scene kind of set it up, and then it plays all the way through to the last episode that Neelix is in, I guess Homeward or whatever it's called, where, throughout the episode it's is he going to get Tuvok to dance? And he finally gets him at the end of the episode just to stick out a foot and wiggle it from side to side. And it's such an affecting moment, even though it's so silly and it's so small, but because you've had 7 seasons of these two characters who, all Neelix wants is for Tuvok to enjoy his company, and Tuvok just is outwardly not given any sign of it. I just think it's a great moment between those two characters.
Love this pick because I'm a Neelix apologist. I will defend Neelix. He's has more gravitas than people remember, but also Tuvok is incredible, and their interactions through 7 seasons, like you just said, are unbelievable. Really, really one of the strengths of the show.
I totally agree.
How about you, Claire? What's your caretaker call out?
My moment is going to be something that I actually found kind of disappointing. A little bit of ooh, what could have been. It's near the end. It's Chakotay overriding B'Elanna and acknowledging Janeway as the captain. It's 90 minutes into 7 seasons worth of plot that supposedly is supposed to be about Starfleet and Maquis kind of having this antagonistic but we have to work together relationship, and I feel like they neutered that so quickly. I know that a lot of people have had similar thoughts. I don't know, it seems like sort of a what could have been for me. I know they do call back to the Maquis and Seska and all of that several times, but it just, I don't know, I kind of wish that particular moment or that tone of that moment had come 8 or 9 episodes into the first season, or at the end of the first season, not at the end of the first episode.
Yeah, people often forget that the early episodes of Voyager, and really early, we're talking about 3 or 4 or 5 in, they still had some really good Maquis Federation conflict moments and development. You're right that pledge to Janeway probably comes a little early in terms of how it was delivered. But there was I guess what I'm trying to say is there is a lot of good Maquis Federation conflict packed in the early there, but it was just not enough, probably.
That's true. I think if you
and not stretched out.
Yeah, I think if you were making Voyager today, the Maquis Federation conflict would be the first season.
It's actually a great point. And think about it, in today's marketplace for television, boy, you could really make an unbelievable story about that conflict. Yeah. So, any thoughts on that one?
I think that's a great pick. I like the moment because it is one of those kind of moments.
Right. It's a rah-rah cheerleader.
It is a rah-rah cheerleader moment, but Claire's right that by getting that kind of immediate gratification, you do sacrifice some of the later story potentials that would have been more interesting and would have made that moment much more powerful if it had happened in episode 11 or 12 than happening at the end of episode 1. So yeah, I like the moment, but I agree. I think you could have played that out for a bigger payoff much later.
I mean, the best Maquis episode is the one that is basically Tuvok writing Voyager fanfic, where it's like, what if the Maquis and the Federation hadn't immediately become buds?
Yep, exactly. Super cool. All right, so mine is really, it's again not a little bit of a cheat. I'm being kind of broad on some of mine, but the first 30 minutes for me of Caretaker is amazing. The scenes on Deep Space Nine with Harry, Tom, and Quark are just super well written. And I love the stuff with Chakotay, B'Elanna, and Tuvok and how that dynamic is working. And the introduction of the Doctor. And, even with the Caretaker setup, with the spookiness of some crew members just disappearing and all these deaths, with the XO dying and the Doctor dying. It's just, all that stuff really works for you. And we'll see how this plays out in my picks. But if I'm being completely honest, as soon as they get to the barnyard cookout stuff and the comp planet, it kind of fades a little bit for me. I'm never a huge fan of the kind of those surreal setups like the barnyard dance, but I love the first 30 minutes and how it sets up the show. So, okay, we'll talk about that in our picks. So, let's go to Enterprise, which we all just talked about our incredible anticipation for it. So, Broken Bow, Alex, what do you got?
So for me, it's a moment late in the episode. Early in the episode, it's established that that Enterprise has a transporter, and it's a little disappointing when they do, because you're expecting them to have abandoned some of the tropes from the previous TV shows, because it's this idea of a pilot and that that you're not just going to kind of see the same thing reworked but in a slightly earlier format. And what I'm about to say goes totally against what they did later in the show, because they definitely did fall into that trap. But I really love the moment at the end of Broken Bow where Archer is transported off of the Sulaban station onto the ship, and he has this look on his face that's like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe I just survived that. It's this pure look of shock, like, what just happened to me? And he even does this thing where he's like, I'm not sure if all of my limbs are in the same place. He puts his hands on his chest, and it's an extremely effective moment that I wish they had done more with later on in the show, to demonstrate the way that these characters are dealing with this technology that we're super familiar with, because we've just watched 3-4 whole shows of this, but that they are kind of coming to grips with it for the first time. And it kind of indicated what the potential of the show could have been, to have exploited more of that.
Such a great moment. And they do, there's still never a lot of confidence in the transporter, but obviously from a storytelling aspect, they utilized it when they needed to. Mm-hmm. So, Claire, how about you? What's your Broken Bow highlight?
It kind of ties in with what Alex was talking about, and also ties into his your encounter at Farpoint moment. I just feel like all the opportunity that you get to see, to walk through the new sets and see the NX-01, especially the engineering set, I feel like as a viewer, that was the treat that Alex was hoping the treatment of the transporter was going to be throughout the whole show. Because to me, it was just like this beautiful melding of this sort of current contemporary with future, and we could see like, oh, here's how they're referencing this future technology that was really past technology because of production order. And just, they did a really wonderful job melding all this strange things they had to consider. I don't know, I just adore that ship.
Me too.
I think it is a much better show than people remember it being anyway. But even if you just flat out don't like the show, just watch it for the set design and the ship design. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, super cool. So mine is similar too with you guys. I just labeled it sense of adventure because it totally washes over me every time I watch Broken Bow. I just think Broken Bow. I think they just absolutely nailed it. You've got. I love the first scene where Archer's arguing with the Vulcans, and he's restraining himself from knocking T'Pol on her ass.
If we hadn't convinced them to let us take Klang's corpse back to Kronos, Earth would most likely be facing a squadron of warbirds by the end of the week.
Corpse? Is he dead? Excuse me. Is this man dead?
His autonomic system was disrupted by the blast, but his redundant neural functions are still...
Is he going to die?
Not necessarily.
Let me get this straight. You're going to disconnect this man from life support, even though he could live. Now, where is the logic in that?
Klang's culture finds honor in death. If they saw him like this, he'd be disgraced.
They're a warrior race. They dream of dying in battle. If you understood the complexities of interstellar diplomacy...
So that's your diplomatic solution, to do what they tell you? Pull the plug?
Your metaphor is crude, but accurate.
We may be crude, but we're not murderers. You're not going to let them do this, are you?
The Klingons have demanded that we return Klang immediately.
Admiral.
We may need to defer to their judgment.
We've been deferring to their judgment for 100 years.
John.
How much longer?
Until you've proven you're ready.
Ready to what?
To look beyond your provincial attitudes and your volatile nature.
Volatile? You have no idea how much I'm restraining myself from knocking you on your ass. These Klingons, they're anxious to get their man back. Fine. I can have my ship ready to go in 3 days. We'll take him back home. Alive.
And when Archer and Trip are flying around the ship with their shuttle pod and Trip bumps into it, and when the Reed and Tucker stuff, keep your shirt on, Lieutenant. There's so many great sense of adventure moments. They're just the anticipation of getting on that ship and going to explore. Is that from Cochrane's speech? I mean, I just feel like they did so. And even like with the Hoshi part, I love when he's talking Hoshi into coming on board, and Archer, she's basically not going to do it, and he's like, yes, too bad. Someone else will be the first person to talk to the Klingons one-on-one. She's like, I'm in. So I love the sense of adventure that pilot conveyed throughout.
Broken Bow feels to me the most like it would work as a feature film. It's got all of the, like, introducing the characters, introducing the timeline and the setting. It does the exposition, but it also, you're right, it doesn't trade exposition for the sense of adventure or the excitement. It's a really good standalone story. It looks really good. I mean, before Discovery, it was definitely the best looking pilot. I think it's a great episode.
And just like you say, Jim, that the characters go on the same kind of journey that the viewer goes on, which is there's this real sense of joy about doing this for the first time, which you don't get in any of the previous premieres because, they're all professional, experienced it's all kind of old news to them. This is them like doing it all for the first time and just getting this real sense of joy out of it.
Yeah, it's a really great point. Obviously, you realize that when you think about the Enterprise crew, but the contrast to past crews being veterans and not having that sense of joy and wonder is that's a great point.
There's always like one new guy who's naive, as opposed to a whole group of people who are excited.
Yeah, right. All right, we are at that point where we are talking about Star Trek Discovery for the first time on TrekRanks. So our 6th premiere for Star Trek Discovery, The Vulcan Hello and Battle at the Binary Stars. Alex, what do you want to highlight from these first 2 episodes?
So I want to highlight the Klingon hologram scene from Battle at the Binary Stars because there is so much potential hidden behind all of that. The way you see the representatives of the different Klingon houses. You have the House of Dagor, you have the House of Mokai, which are really cool Easter egg shout-outs to previous Star Trek shows. You have the different kind of aesthetics of the Klingons. You have the T'Kuvma-Cole relationship. I'm really excited to see more of Cole. I mean, he only had a short scene, but for the first time in a long time, I got this sort of visceral sense of danger off of a Klingon character. And so I think the whole Klingon arc is going to be really, really interesting. A couple of the scenes may have been a little too speechifying when it came to the Klingons, but in that one scene, I think it encapsulates just a huge amount of potential for what we can see play out for the Klingons over the next few episodes.
Such a good pick, and it's all I can think about when I think about that scene is Cole.
Yeah.
Just how dynamic Kenneth Marshall, right?
Mitchell.
What's his name? Kenneth Marshall? Kenneth Mitchell. Kenneth Mitchell, sorry. He's so dynamic in that character in just a few lines. I cannot wait to see more from this guy. Kenneth Marshall, by the way, is Eddington.
Yes.
So I knew that from some.
Another great character.
Another great character. Let's talk about him too. But Cole just looks incredible. So I love this pick. Claire, what do you think?
I can't wait to see Cole when he's actually in the same room as the camera. I know that's a weird thing to say, but if he's projecting that much menace and intrigue and just everything, and it's this like holographic version of him where the fidelity's not quite there. What is he going to be like when you're in the room with him? I can't wait.
Such a great point.
So my moment is a single camera move.
Ooh.
I haven't seen anyone mention this yet, and
I hope it's what I'm thinking you're going to say, but go.
Okay. My moment is the camera coming through the Shanzu's bulkhead, sort of through the view screen, the first time to come onto the bridge, the first time that you come onto the bridge, because it's a direct nod to that same camera angle used in The Cage, when the camera comes through the top of the bridge and back down. Yep. That is my moment. It's super subtle. You don't have to have ever seen any previous Star Trek to you're not missing anything. You're not going to be confused why the camera did that. It's just this subtle, I don't know. To me, that was just, I was really excited by what I'd seen before then. I was super into it, but when I saw that little moment, I just was like, yeah, this feels good. Like, this is, not that it wasn't Star Trek before, but it was really Star Trek then.
No, it's a great moment. That's what I was thinking you might say. 'Cause it's such a great nod to The Cage, way it just the way it's executed. And I like that there's a little bit of fourth wall breaking on a couple of camera angles in the first 2 episodes. One with that one, because there's a little waggle as it goes through the wall or the screen or whatever, which is fourth wall breaking. And then the same when the camera is kind of attached to the to one of the coffins that's flying through space, and it's kind of shaking with the coffin shaking. So some interesting stuff there. But I love that throwback to The Cage. Super cool.
I hadn't even made the connection with The Cage until you mentioned it just now, and now I appreciate it all the more.
Oh, good.
Yeah, super cool. Another great shot, which I was thinking about, was there's an unbelievable tracking shot when they when she's talking to the young Burnham, Ward Burnham, as she comes on board the Shenzhou, and they leave the transporter room. It's one single shot all the way down the corridor. They walk into the turbo lift, and normally the camera, if it's going to be one shot and leave the turbo lift, it spins around them. The camera cuts between them and spins around, finishes their conversation, the door opens, and the bridge is there, and they walk out onto the bridge. All one shot. Really, really cinematic.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff that they're doing. So for me, this was definitely my hardest pick to make. There's so much to unpack from these episodes. After thinking about it for a while, though, I'm choosing Michael Burnham. I'm already just super in love with this character and the performance. And the twist ending at the end, that she's now a mutineer, and that's the real story that we're going to be watching on Discovery for the next few months. For me, that was incredible. I loved her banter with Saru. I didn't love it, but the way that they portrayed her decision to literally just betray Georgiou, because she thinks that's what's best for them, and the fact that she's going to have to live with the death of Georgiou, blaming herself, and she's got this plan for Takuvma, and she ends up killing him, even though she was the one that said, well, we can't kill him or he'll be a martyr. I think what they've set up for this character is really, really fascinating, and I could not be more excited about seeing what happens with her story.
Computer privacy.
How dare you challenge me? I apologize for my insubordination.
Don't you realize that kind of talk can destabilize a crew?
Don't underestimate them. I've overseen their exercises. They're ready for battle.
Battle is not a simulation. It's blood and screams and funerals. I taught you better than this. We don't start shooting on a hunch, and we don't take innocent lives, period. I understand your history with the Klingons.
My commitment to this course of action is not emotional. We target his neck, cut off its head.
You're still injured. You're not thinking
Thousands
clearly.
of lives will be lost because of failure to act.
Whose lives? Victims of your imaginary war.
Your life, Captain. Yours.
Stand down, Commander Burnham. That's an order.
Any takeaways? What are you guys thinking of Burnham so far?
Love it. Love the character. Love the relationship with Captain Georgiou. I thought that was really well set up and well executed. The opening scene, was a little clunky, but everything after that, in terms of their dynamic, was just top notch, to the point that when Burnham betrays Georgiou and gives her the Vulcan nerve pinch, and then again at the end of Battle of Binary Stars, where spoiler alert, Georgiou is killed. Even though you've only seen their relationship play out over 2 episodes, it's still such a dramatic moment that's so well earned.
Yeah,
absolutely. Agreed. And the flashback when you first see Burnham in her sort of most Vulcan self, I guess, to put it that way. I was so impressed by the fact that, we'd only been with this character for, 60 minutes or so at that point. And yet already it was like, wow, this is a very different version of her. It's so impressive how much growth and, I don't know, the performance was amazing. And again, she was, Vulcans are, I think, probably the hardest aliens to cast and to portray. And obviously Michael Burnham is human, but she's a very Vulcanized human, and she's not robotic. I was so impressed with her performance. Can't wait for tomorrow.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so that was our expanded Prime Directive breakdown of these premieres, but now it's time for the moment of truth. We're going to introduce Third Roboticon to help us run through the order of things.
I am a Jem'Hadar. He is a Vorta. It is the order of things.
Okay, Alex, let's start with you. So let's run down. We're going to have you run down your top 5 Star Trek premiere episodes, and in case anyone's wondering, we're sticking with the top 5 because, not top 6, because top 5 is kind of what we do, and it's going to build suspense now. Because now when you get down to the number 1 pick, you're going to have to do the math at home and figure out, which one did he leave out, and what is his number 6 episode as well as his number 1 episode. So let's start with your number 5 pick and run through your choices.
You want me to do all 5 all at once? All right.
Yep. Let's do it.
So number 5. Okay, so number 5, Encounter at Farpoint, a 5-word summary, a dangerous savage child race, ? And the hashtag is great joy and gratitude.
How could it not be? How could it not be?
Number 4 is Emissary. 5-word summary is character drama, but profits drag. And my hashtag is aggressive adversarial.
I like it.
My number 3 is the Vulcan Hello and Battle at the Binary Stars. My 5-word summary is Star Trek is back! ! And my hashtag is hashtag object of unknown origin.
Ooh.
My number 2 is Broken Bow. My 5-word summary is everything old is new again. And my hashtag is keep your shirt on, Lieutenant. And my number 1 pick is Caretaker. My 5-word summary is set a course for home. And my hashtag is will it make me a uniform like yours?
I love it. Okay, this is fascinating. So we're doing the math at home. That means number 6 is the man trap, which is totally understandable. So, all right, Claire, let's run through your top 5.
All right. Number 5 for me is Caretaker. 5 words are, real caretaker here is Janeway. Isn't that cheesy?
It's true.
No, it's fantastic. How have I never thought of that? That's brilliant. Sorry, continue with your...
My hashtag is wasted potential with Maquis. Number 4 is Emissary. 5 words, strong series setup, but drags. Alex, you and I use the same example.
Same page.
Yeah. Hashtag also starring Tarak Noor. Because honestly, my favorite thing about watching that episode is just the sets and the computer design and all that. Number 3 is Broken Bow. 5 words are NXL1 dazzles from the start. Hashtag bitchy Vulcans, grumpy humans.
Love it. Love it.
Number 2 is the Vulcan Hello / Battle at the Binary Stars. We're going to have to come up with a shorter name for that.
Nope, those are their names.
Okay. No, I mean, with the premiere as a whole. 5 words are Trek's never looked this good. And my hashtag, I wanted to come up with something better, but I just couldn't come up with anything other than hashtag more please.
I love that hashtag. You can't have a better hashtag. That's what TrekRanks is all about. More Star Trek.
And my number 1 pick is Encounter at Farpoint.
Oh, right. Wow.
I know. I'm playing all my cards on this one. My 5 words are Trek's fundamental thesis plus silliness, because a lot of the episode is not very good. And my hashtag is let's see what's out there.
I love it. Okay, so very interesting. TOS would be your one to leave off the list.
Just because it's not really.
It's not a pilot.
It doesn't.
That's my reasoning as well.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Okay, so let me run through my list then. My number 5 is the Man Trap from the original series. Salt Monster stands through time. Hashtag M113. My number 4 is Encounter at Farpoint. And the 5 words and a hashtag are successful relaunch, Q succeeds wildly, hashtag all good things makes it even better. My number 3 is not the Emissary from DS9. And my 5 words and a hashtag is perfect debut, deep layered characters, hashtag why do you exist here? My number 2 is The Vulcan Hello and Battle at the Binary Stars. And my 5 words... Oh, I love my 5 words in a hashtag. My 5 words is, I'm trying to save you. Hashtag, I'm trying to save all of you.
Nice.
Love that moment.
Nice.
Love that moment. And my number 1 is Enterprise, Broken Bow. 5 words in a hashtag. Best ever pilot introduces amazing threads. Hashtag Vulcans, Klingons, Suliban. I love what they set up there in Broken Bow. So it's still my favorite pilot. But DSC is right on its heels, which means my number 6 is Caretaker.
No Caretaker love from you guys.
Which is Alex's number 1. I just can't get past the Kazon needing water, but they have warp drive on their engines and ships.
The second the guy with the banjo shows up and the lady offers them pie, I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, it was a little too surreal and out there for me.
So,
what were you going to say?
I hate the banjo. I do have problems with the Kazon and the water thing, but there are also scenes that I hate in all 6 of them.
Well, we don't talk about those on Trek.
We don't talk about those.
We love.
Right. And I love the rest of it so much that I'm happy to kind of just ignore, like, close my eyes and cover my ears during the banjo scene.
That.
You know what? I feel exactly the same way about Encounter at Farpoint. I am in no way defending, like, probably 75% of that episode is not very good at all. The episode part is not good. The premiere, like, piloty... The presentation of, like, here is what Star Trek is going to be now. That part is what I love. But the rest of it's bad. It's
a great way to summarize how I feel about it, too. So... It's all right. So a couple of quick stats. So we each had a different number 1. Alex had Caretaker, Claire Encounter at Farpoint. I had Broken Bow. Let's see here. There are Enterprise was in the top 3 on all of our picks, as was Discovery. So that's unique. And there's not too many other trends here. Deep Space Nine was 4 for you guys and 3 for me. You guys had TOS outside of your top 5. I had it at number 5, and we had a little bit of a discrepancy there on our Voyager ranks. I was 6, Claire was 5, and Alex had Caretaker at number 1. Love the difference. That's what TrekRanks is all about. What was that, Claire?
I have a question for you guys in terms of when you were thinking about ranking Discovery and where you were going to put it. Personally, it's hard for me to say whether it is a good pilot since I haven't seen the rest of the series that's going to follow yet. I mean, it was an excellent 2 hours of television, I'll tell you that. I loved watching it. But it's hard for me to rank it in terms of, like, how does it successfully set up what follows? Because I haven't seen what follows yet. So I'd be interested to, I don't know, look at this again in a year and see if I would change where it sits.
Well, that's the beauty of TrekRanks. The whole point of it is so we can have a fun conversation about Trek. Under no circumstances, if we do this episode again tomorrow, we could change all our picks. Who knows? And you certainly, I mean, Discovery is 6 days old, so you have to take it with a grain of salt of how you're basing that versus something you've watched 30 times over the last 25 years. So obviously there's differences there. But hey, mission accomplished, because we just had an awesome, fun conversation about Star Trek. So
hell yeah.
All right, we're going to skip the regeneration cycle, and as we do every week, we're going to get stuck in a temporal causality loop because it's fun.
The Enterprise has been caught up in a temporal causality loop, and I suspect that something similar may have happened to you.
All right, before we can get out of here, we're going to need to hear from you guys. And I'd say, through these last few months we've been doing the podcast, we've obviously been getting a lot of great feedback. But, man, the Epic Arcs episode, we got just dozens of responses on Twitter. Very cool, fast response from when we launched that episode just in a few days. So with that in mind, we're going to break it up again tonight. We'll highlight just a few picks because there's just no way to to pick just one. And, one of the interesting things about this was that literally everyone had different and unique takes on an epic arc. There was a lot of consensus with things like the Dominion War in various formats and some different Klingon arcs. God, they got a lot of love, as did the Xindi. But there was, also, there's a lot of shipping going on. A lot of people were picking relationships. I had no idea that Paris and Torres' relationship was so popular, as was Rom and Lita, and Riker and Troy, and Kira and Odo. So a lot of different cool ways that people approach this. So, all right, we're going to kick it off with another inspired list from Trekkie Rick, at Nerd Rick. Love this guy on Twitter. His number 5 epic arc is kind of amazing. He chose the Joran Dax arc, and his 5 words in a hashtag were "Forgotten You Were a Killer," hashtag "Creepy Past Love," and I love that deep cut choice that he had. Another good pick was Hippocrates Noah, who's at Emissary DS9 on Twitter, and they had 2 great inclusions on their list: Spock and Sarek arc, which is super cool. And he also included the Rise and Fall of the Maquis arc in his picks. Those were 2 pretty unique ones. And then, let's see here. I'm going through a few. Let's close with a couple of great choices from TEH Borg at Star Trek 1701. These are some cool, more deep cut picks. So it was one that was on my short list. It was the Captain Pike / Menagerie arc. And I almost picked that in my episode because I just love the way they weeded the cage into the menagerie. So their 5 words in a hashtag was "First Captain commands Spock's loyalty," hashtag "My body is a cage." And then the deepest of deep cut choices, they chose the Kira O'Brien pregnancy arc, which is just hilarious. I know, it's hilarious. This is such a great pick. 5 words, and the 5 words is genius. Kira going the extra miles, hashtag "You may now give birth." Very, very clever. Okay, we're going to do one more. She didn't send 5 words in a hashtag, but 2 more awesome deep cut picks from Rachel Hollingdale at RV Kirk, who chose, again, this one just never would think of, the Elizabeth Tucker arc from Enterprise and how that affected Trip, which is just an awesome pick. And she chose the Sirenites arc from Enterprise, and there's absolutely no reason at all for me to completely love that pick.
Not a one.
All right. So hearing those, Alex and Claire, any epic arcs that jump into your head that you would want to throw out there really quick?
The only one I was thinking about, which you just mentioned, is the Sarek arc, because we are getting an extension of the Sarek arc, and who would have thought that was ever going to happen?
Oh my gosh, you can literally add that to that arc now.
Yeah.
All right, Claire, anything top of your head? Yeah, what do you got?
I'm sure that this got mentioned over and over probably, but just Nog's arc. I mean, it starts. Yep. He kind of has a similar like Miles O'Brien showing up randomly in Encounter at Farpoint and ending up being an extremely important character. Nog just sort of shows up, sort of throwaway Ferengi kid, and he's this incredible character.
Yeah, Nog got a lot of love on some of the submissions, and here at TrekRanks we have all day for Nog. We love Nog. So, yeah.
And can I just say my favorite, shout out to Rom's Snaggletooth.
Yeah.
It is all I look at whenever he's on screen, and I love it. It's the weirdest character.
All
voice,
7 seasons of it. We did not get a Rom Snaggletooth arc pick. So,
but we should have.
Shout out.
We should have.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Michael Westmore, or whoever did that, for that stupid Snaggletooth.
So good. All right, so unlike Captain Morgan Bateson, who was stuck in that damn anomaly for 90 years, we have once again easily pulled ourselves out of this week's temporal causality loop. So as always, just want to thank everyone for all the amazing responses to TrekRanks. Keep the list coming to @TrekRanks so we can add them to our database numbers. And again, we want to hear from you. Our show is better when we hear from you. So put together your own list of top 5 epic arcs or your top 5 series premieres in Trek history, and give us a call at 609-512-5050. 5527 at 609-512-LLAP. We want to hear from you. So, all right, in the next episode of TrekRanks, we're going to be, it's going to be dropped probably about 10 days before Halloween. So we are diving into, we could have done top 5 scary episodes or moments. No, we're going right for the jugular. Our next episode is top 5 gory moments.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, I know what number
Okay,
one's
well, I was just about to ask you, what's the first thing that pops into your head when you think of the top 5 gory moments in Trek history?
Exploding dude.
Yep.
Oh, okay. All right.
I blanked on the name of the
Conspiracy.
Thank you. I just didn't want to say Cat's Paw because you mentioned Halloween, and I was thinking that. Obviously, the name of that episode is not Cat's Paw. Yeah, the guy just exploding like a ham.
Yeah, that is obviously pretty freaking gruesome, and I'm sure will get submitted a lot. I gotta think if I'm going to include that. I don't know. There's a lot to pick. There's a lot of creepy.
It might be too obvious.
No such thing on TrekRanks.
You could do another one from that episode is them eating the
Oh, that's gross too. Yeah.
Well, that's more gross. That's not necessarily gory.
The one that
that's true. There's not a lot of gore in Star Trek.
But there are some subtle gore, like getting cut off at what is it? Is it night? I can't remember the episode now, but where they walk around the corner and the character's halfway cut through the.
That is exactly the one I was going to say.
Yeah.
That's the one that first pops into my
gory.
head. And the look on her face, and she's like halfway into the floor. It creeps me out every time.
Her hand.
That's still pretty gory. So, even though there's not a lot of blood and guts, I can imagine what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty gross. All right. Okay, so before we wrap this up, huge thanks, obviously, to our awesome and brilliant guests, Alex Perry and Claire Little. Thanks for joining us, guys. Super great having you on.
Thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
So much fun.
Absolutely.
And it's just the start of our Discovery talk. I love it. Discovery, once again, is in play for all TrekRanks moving forward. So, all right. Thanks again for everyone engaging with us here on episode 12 of the TrekRanks podcast. As always, I want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
Hi there, thanks again for listening. If you're cruising the galaxy looking for even more Trek talk, why not visit our good friends Bill and Dan over at TrekGeeks.com? They've got a great podcast that covers a wide range of Star Trek topics, so you're sure to find something you'll love. And if you're in the mood for some awesome tunes, then you really need to head over to 5yearmission.net. The guys are writing a song for every episode of the original series, and each one is absolutely brilliant. So that's TrekGeeks.com and 5yearmission.net. Check them out today.